Welcome back to The Donkey and the Bee, where we share ways in which we grow together in our marriage, entrepreneurship, and finances. And today, we're going to talk finances. And this is Brett's favorite thing to talk about. So I'm sure he's very excited.
I am excited. We're talking about money mindset today. And I think really, as we've talked through this and we've been married 17 years, have gone through different shifts or different mindsets in our relationship and growing together on this. And I think as we were talking about this, man, we didn't realize that we started with a default money mindset just because you may not make a plan together or alone to have certain beliefs on money doesn't mean that you don't already have these things. So I think today we want to talk through these things and kind of pull back the blinders that some of you may have and realize that you do believe certain things about your money or about your lack of money that's really impacting your life. And to just kind of identify these things and put into perspective, here's some of the things that we learned on our journey and kind of how the stages have gone for us as we started out very young and poor to, building successful businesses and setting ourselves up for financial freedom, how we've shifted through that mindset and that journey.
Yes, I think the one thing that I would hope you would get out of this is that you have a money mindset. You may just not be aware of it. And I think that we weren't aware of our money mindset until we stepped into the education realm where we started reading books about finances and kind of were like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that this is what we believe about money. And so if there's anything that you get from this today is just your awareness of yourself and your thoughts and views on money.
Yeah, that's true. Well, let's kick us off.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. So, the absence of a money mindset, the default money mindset, I could say maybe if you are not actively pursuing something in your brain, in your subconscious, saying, "Hey, here's what I am programming myself or teaching myself to believe about my money or my ability to make money or save money or invest or take care of my family," then you're really leaving it to culture or what you've been taught by your parents, by your neighbors, by your church, by a lot of things that impact not on a conscious level necessarily, but maybe in a subconscious level a lot of times how you are living your life based on things that you don't really have at the surface level. So I think for us, we're like many people. We got married young in college and waiting tables, trying to get ahead and not really finding a way to do it. And I think part of it was because of our beliefs about money. When we were young and uneducated on money, we really believed that it was limited, that there was only so much we could get, that it was hard to get money, that we had to have more time in order to get money, meaning we had to go work another shift or have another full-time job or another part-time job. But our money was tied to our time. It was tied to the amount of hours we had. If we were making 25 bucks an hour and working 40 hours a week, then that's how much we could bring in. And if we wanted to make more money, then we had to give more time. And it was like, well, I'm already working 40 hours. Do I go up and get a part-time job and now work 60 hours? Like that seems like we're trying to have a family and have fun and save and like, well, how do I give more time? How do I give more of myself if I only have 24 hours in the day and have to have some type of work-life balance? What do I do? And we were kind of like, I think like many people, like, I don't know how this system works. Like, how are you supposed to get ahead in this world? Because I believe that my time is tied or my money is tied to my time. And so therefore we only have the same amount of time. We're therefore trying to increase the amount of money we're making per each unit of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we first started getting into the money mindset and educating ourselves, I was working 3 jobs because Brett was going through the fire academy, and we both kind of were taught the way of getting a job that had benefits, that had the pension, and so we were both pursuing that because that's what we were told and we were taught. And I think it's almost like the cultural norm. That's the cultural norm. At least 17 years ago, it was a cultural norm. I don't think it's similar to that now, but the cultural norm was you go to college, you get your degree, you get married, you buy the house, you get the job, and then you just climb the corporate ladder. That was pretty much our plan from the very beginning was that. And I think there came a point where we were both doing these jobs and working so many hours and we were just like, why are we doing this? Like, we're barely making any money. The most we'll ever make at the top of the ladder was a certain amount, and it wasn't very much. And so we're like, why are we doing this? There
Mhm.
has to be a different way. And I think at that point where we just got desperate for answers for another option. So we were done with that cultural money mindset. I think that we were kind of at the end of our road there and started educating ourselves. And that's kind of when we turned to the next level of our money mindset.
Yeah. Well, before we get into that next level, um, I want to differentiate. I think like there was two different belief systems that we kind of go through, or that you and I went through, and one was this like lack of abundance, lack of money, and really living paycheck to paycheck. And we went from that, and I think like many people, you do you scrimp and you save, and you barely have any money left at the end of the month. And then from there, you're still going with this analogy that I was speaking about your time being tied to your dollars, and you kind of move from that maybe starting out space, or that hourly wage kind of job, or, for us waiting tables, to I'm going to get a better job. I'm going to make more income, and because I'm making more income, I can either have more savings, or have more expenses, or buy the fancy things, right? You're kind of transitioning into that middle class lifestyle, where now we are able to afford our first house, and we were young and we bought a boat, and we started doing funner trips, and we had more disposable income because we had a higher pay rate, right? We were still working the 40 to 60 hours a week, and we didn't have any passive income. We hadn't educated ourselves on that part of it yet. But nonetheless, you still get into this like pretty comfortable spot. And I think that's where most people are striving for. Let me increase my income. Let me get from 60 grand a year to 100 grand a year, or from 100 grand a year to 250 grand a year, right? Because then I'll be able to buy the boat and the nice purses, and travel 2 weeks a year to Europe, and put my kids in private school. And it's really all about, here's the expenses that I can now afford. And really, at the end of the month, you're still on a percentage basis in the same spot, right? You're saving very little amount. It's a higher net number, but as a percentage, it's really the same. You're saving a few percent of your total income each month, and really just getting trapped in this next level of this journey, of this system of the middle class trap. The middle class mindset is really compelling, because you see people doing it. You see these nice houses. You go to dinner parties with your girlfriend or your boyfriend, and they got the new SUV, and the four kids, and they got a nice house, right? And they have everything together. But you see behind the scenes, right? Credit cards are maxed out. They took a second mortgage on their property. Like, they're living in this trap, and it's really a distinction in our journey between like starting where we started in college, increasing our income, and still being stuck
Mhm.
in the system, in the rat race, before we educated ourselves, and really then learned a system to pull ourselves out of the system, right? Being controlled by the man,
Mhm.
being limited to our time as a direct equivalent to how much money we were going to make.
Mhm. I think what was important for us during this whole transition of our mindset was that we were educating ourselves together and we were believing in these certain aspects of money management together. And because we educated ourselves and we had that same belief, I think that we both were wanting to take the actions that it took in order to get a different money mindset, in order to get that financial freedom. And so I think that's a super important aspect in this is that we have the same mindset toward it. And I think that's where it can kind of get tricky for people if you're in a relationship, maybe you're 5 years in your marriage and one person gets an epiphany about money and they want to change their finances drastically. And then they approach their spouse, and their spouse isn't on the same alignment with them in that. And so I think that's where it gets a little hard, um, because it, one person wants to save and one person wants to spend. And so I think what made it more of an anchor for both of us was that we were both in it. We both wanted it. We both educated ourselves. We were encouraging toward each other, toward our education. So, for instance, our whole trajectory starting toward this was we read a book from Robert Kiyosaki called Rich Dad Poor Dad, and Brett read it, and he came to me and said, "Hey, this is super important. I think we should implement this. I want you to read it." And instead of me saying, "Oh, forget it. I'm not going to read it," like I knew it was important to him. And so even though I didn't necessarily want to read it, I still read it because I knew it was important to you. And so I think that is super vital in getting on the same page with their partner, is being encouraging toward one another and open your mind to other ideas besides your own. So that's kind of something that I think is important to talk about too, is being in alignment on this money mindset with each other and encouraging each other toward that.
I agree. I think that you made the statement about, getting on your same page with your spouse, and that a lot of times it's common that you have like the spender and the saver. And it's kind of a common little thing people put people in a box.
Yes, it's cultural. They think the woman always spends and the guy always saves. And
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you that is not true. So,
Yes,
anyways.
it can be either or. But I would, in my mind, I don't think of it that way. You said one person wants to spend and one person wants to save. I think everyone really wants to spend. It's just, what time do you want to spend the money at? And really the distinction be, do you want to spend the money now or do you want to spend the money later? Because everyone wants this money for something, right? Is it security? Is it I'm saving for a rental property? Is I'm saving for a vacation? I'm saving to pay down debt? Like, you want to put it towards something. So I think if you can frame it in that respect and say, okay, we're here to spend money, right? That's our goal. Let's spend some money. But what are we spending it on, and when are we going to spend it? Because we came together and we set goals for our family and for what we wanted. And I think that was really, really important for us, starting out with our marriage, and as we were growing, and becoming more responsible adults, making more money, etc. But really, the thing came down to, okay, here's what we're planning. We are going to be saving to, one, knock off debt. We're going to be saving to invest. We're going to be saving to buy our first rental property or our first assisted living or whatever the case is. But it's money that wants to be spent, because it's much easier to have this conversation with your spouse if it's a positive thing. Hey, we are going to spend. It's just, what are we going to spend it on? And then when are we going to spend it? Because let's get together on the same page here. Let's, instead of having some small goals, let's throw out some big goals, right? What could we do if we buckle down for the next 3 or 5 years, right? How quickly could we knock off this debt? And then how quickly could we buy an asset that cash flows, right? And I think you and I educated ourselves on this. And instead of getting excited about the boat, right? Because we had a boat and it was a money pit and it was, second best day of our life, the day we got rid of this damn boat. So we got together and we created dreams and goals about what excited us, that were assets instead of liabilities, something that made us money each month instead of something that costed us money each month. And that's where I think we came together on the same page, and we're able to say, okay, we're going to sacrifice together and we're going to create some boundaries for our finances. And we're going to do this with this growth mindset in mind, because we were really attracted to the middle class mindset, right? Of having our first house and fixing it up. And we spent the first few years of our marriage chasing this dream. And at the end of those years of marriage, right, we had a house that we fixed up, but we had no savings. We had no plan for retirement. We had no real trajectory towards how we were going to create financial freedom until, like you said, we got that hook. We had that bright light that came from this book and said, hey, here's a structure. Here's how you can do it. So then if we just got together and we now changed our goals, because we had goals together, they were just middle class goals. They were, let's fix this place up. Let's impress our friends. Let's get a fancy car. Let's fix up our boat. Let's go on a cool trip, right? Those are like middle class goals, and they're fun and they're great and they're really compelling. But I think as we educated ourselves, we moved to a whole new section of okay, our goals are not liabilities. Now our goals are assets. And how can we buy these things? How can we spend this money and when can we do it? Because let's spend it on an asset instead.
Yeah, I think that what you just said as far as the middle class mentality, even saying that now, I still have like a weird feeling in my gut saying it because I think that most individuals strive to be the middle class. And I think that it's even hard for me to point it in a negative light, you know?
Hmm.
And so I'm not saying anything negative about the middle class. I think it's more of a opportunity to open your eyes to your views on money. And so I hope that, I mean, again, my biggest hope is that you all aren't just listening to the middle class or rich dad poor dad or hearing these terms and taking it in a negative way. I'm hopeful that the words you're hearing are making you open your eyes to your own finances and your own money mindset. And so, with that being said, our beliefs were radically changed once we saw the money mindset we had and the money mindset that we grew up believing. And the money mindset we grew up seeing, to be honest. We both kind of grew up in an environment where we weren't in a bad money mindset, but I think it was more of there wasn't an abundant money mindset. And I think that's where we changed and our trajectory toward money was changed as well.
Yeah. So I think that it's important to differentiate the idea of the middle class income versus the middle class mindset because really they're not tied together. There's a commonality between the two, but you can really be at any income in life, whether you're low, high, or income earner, and still be attracted to this trap of increasing your income and spending it all and barely saving anything. Where we were inspired to venture out and educate ourselves on this is really the next level of mindset. And we talked about this idea of our income being directly related to our time. I'm going to trade my 40 hours and I'm going to get 60 grand. Or I'm going to climb the corporate ladder. I'm going to trade my 20 hours and get 100 grand or 250 or whatever the case is. But this idea that if I increased my income and then I saved it, instead of buying the boat and these things, I'm going to pay off my debt and then I'm going to save that money and purchase an asset. I'm going to invest that money into something that's going to have babies. My dollars are going to have little dollars. They're going to make babies. And every single month, there's going to be new income coming in. And I think that is the spark, the basis of this next level of mindset that we achieved or we are continuing to grow in is the financial mindset. And it's really not about how much money you make because it's really more about a mindset. You can make 50 grand a year as on a teacher's salary and save majority of your income and have a side hustle and start buying. We started buying mobile homes for cheap. That was our first venture into real estate investing, right? Like anybody could buy these things. We bought them for so dang cheap, but they were great ROIs. Or you could be the person who makes, multiple six figures and still saves a lot of your money and you're buying apartment buildings or whatever it is. The premise is that anyone at any income level can do this. It's not about tying yourself in these categories to an income level. It's really about a mindset shift from what am I going to do? Am I going to pursue short-term spending now? I want to spend this on myself now and get the pleasure of it now. Or do I want to save this and defer it where it's going to be much bigger in the future, where there's going to be a 5X or 10X, 100X, where I can have the pleasure now, or I can defer this and perhaps I can stop working in 5 or 10 or 20 years. And then I can just do whatever I want with the passive income.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think what really helped us with this was going broke. And I'm sure you all have heard of Grant Cardone. If you have not, look into him. He's awesome. He always talks about going broke. And we read this in his books and we kind of really understand what he's talking about, but really implement it into our life. And pretty much the premise is the income that comes in, usually it goes into one account, right? But for us, we split it in multiple accounts. And these multiple accounts, one of them was an account where we could not touch. It was a sacred account. So, percentage of our funds, our income, went in that sacred account. And so when you look at your actual account, the one that you spend from, it was a certain amount, right? It was a fixed number every month. So you couldn't spend over that. So in a term, it was we were going broke, literally. Like when I would look at our bank account, it was so small because we only had a certain percentage of our income that we were allowed, quote unquote, to spend because we were pretty much stashing it away in this other account that we did not see, that we could not have access to in order to build that up so that we could purchase assets. And that's really what helped us. I think the separation of accounts, splitting our money was something that was necessary at the time so that we didn't spend it, but also beneficial to build up that money so that we can put it toward an asset that would make us more money.
Yeah, this was the trick that really got us saving, and saving with a purpose, saving to buy assets. And we spent the first few years, even in business, making good money, multiple six figures, and literally spending all of it because it was in one bank account. And then we read this book, Profit First. And it's really kind of similar to the old school envelope system that your grandma used to talk about. Here's my envelope for groceries, and here's for utilities and for rent. And it's kind of like that. We do it on our businesses though. And fast forwarding now, we have three active businesses that bring an active income, but really only one of those businesses we use as our spending money. So we keep ourselves going broke again. We have three incomes coming in, and literally two of them exclusively go to savings, saving to buy an asset. Then the other one, part of that we get to spend, and then the other part of that goes to savings. So we are literally continuing to go broke. And what I really love about this is when we first got into this, we were saving, like 5 or 6% of our income. Now it's way over 50% of our income. We are able to spend the same amount of money each month. We're continuing to grow broke, and then we're just stacking away because of this mindset, right? It's we're throwing out the middle class mindset of, hey, I have extra money. Let's go on a trip. Let's go buy a new RV. Let's go buy a boat. Let's go do all these different things. And we splurge sometimes and reward ourselves to keep ourselves going and hustling and doing these things. But in the overall principle of it, we have used this strategy to transition our mindset, which therefore transitioned our income level from that middle class mindset to the sophisticated investor mindset. And it was pretty simple. None of this stuff is super complicated, but it does take a lot of discipline.
Mhm. What would you say, and this is a question to you, Brett, what would you say to somebody who says goes to a conference and gains all this knowledge about money and they want to change their money mindset? What would their first step be if they came to you and said, "Hey, I know this mindset. I want to step into it. I really want to develop that mindset. What can I do?" What would your advice for them be?
I think you have to start with a why. It has to be big enough that gets you excited about it to make a sacrifice for the next X amount of years. So you start with your why, and if you are married or have a partner, you have this exercise together. What is powerful enough that and gets you excited enough that you can make an agreement to, I'm going to implement a plan, right? So here, start with your why, and then the second part immediately following would be a plan, right? Tackling any debt, good debt versus bad debt, knocking off bad debt, and then saving, setting up those sacred accounts, splitting those incomes so it automatically goes in those sacred accounts you cannot touch, and then educating yourself on a niche. What, like for us, it's real estate, and we almost think of it like it's our second job, even though it's a passive source of income. We are continuing to learn markets, to educate ourselves, to transition into, okay, do I want to buy apartments or single family? Do I want to do assisted living? Whatever it is, we're continuing to learn these things so that we can essentially invest in deals that we are confident are deals, because we have grown ourselves from a novice to a potential expert over a few years on this certain thing. So you're knocking down debt, saving money, putting in a sacred account, and then using that time while you're saving to really learn something. So that way you're not just wasting this money, you're investing in something that you know to be a real asset that's going to provide for your family.
What would you say is the number that someone would need in their sacred account to start investing?
I think it can be, as small as maybe 20 to 50,000. And it really depends on your market. I would first say knock off any bad debt. Probably not your mortgage, things like that, but something that, you're paying credit card debt or things like that with a high interest rate. I would spend all that time, focus, commitment, knocking that down. And then from there, our daughters have their own business and they've saved money and they're in that range. They're about, 50,000, and we are actively looking now to purchase their first rental property. And I think that, depending on the market in the country where you're at, you should be finding something that cash flows. So you don't need a ton of cash to put down on a down payment. But I would say, yeah, if you can get to that, 20 to $50,000 range after knocking down bad debt, you got a good plan there.
hmm I think one thing that helped myself personally with the money mindset was having what you said, Brett, the why. There needs to be a really strong conviction of your why in order for you to push toward wealth. And I think a lot of times there's negative connotations with money that we all know culturally, right? Anyone who has money is evil. They must have done something that was breaking the law. They must have hurt people in order to get this money. All these things, right? It's the cultural belief that if you have money that you're evil or you must have done something bad. And so I actually had to overcome that mindset because I kind of grew up believing that as well. But the mindset I have now is, and this may come off really, really harsh because the first time I heard someone say this, it really hit me in the gut. That if I don't make wealth or pursue wealth, I'm selfish. Let me say that again in a different way. If I don't pursue my excellence or the way that God has created me, he's given me gifts. He's given everybody gifts, right? And if I don't pursue my best self and pursue the wealth that I know that I can build, I'm actually selfish. And so that kind of hit me in the gut when I first heard that. Like, how can I be selfish if I'm not making money? That's terrible. But it's really true. I feel like a lot of people are so consumed by their own family. They're just looking inward, right? It's inside your house. I need to take care of my spouse. I need to take care of my kids, my mom and dad and my cousins, just my family. But what if you looked outside of that as well? What if you could take care of your actual family, but then looking up and outside of your home, you could also help the family across the street, or you could help numerous families around the world. I mean, look at Tony Robbins. He feeds millions of people every year, and he's only able to do that because he's wealthy, because he has built himself a substantial amount of assets. And so I look at being wealthy as such a positive thing in order to be able to help so many people. It's not being wealthy just because I can drive a flashy car and have a big house and that kind of, that's not at all the reason why I want to have wealth. It's because I want to be able to help as many people as I can with the time that I have on this earth.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And like you, it's a struggle for myself as well. When as I was growing my money mindset, it was like, well, okay, Brad, are you being selfish? When is too much? Like, shouldn't you be content with what you have? I hear a lot of people say, well, I want to make good money. I want to be well off, but I don't want to be rich, right? Like you can literally hear them and see it behind their eyes when they have this negative money mindset. You can literally see like rich people are bad. They don't say it, but you can see it in their demeanor as they have this conversation. I don't want to be a multimillionaire. I just want to take care of my family. Okay, great. Well, you have to have bigger goals and a bigger mindset in order to get out of this trap because
Mhm.
literally you will be stuck in this. People who do not think bigger than and think outside of the box will always be stuck in it.
Mhm.
So I think for me, I had to convince myself that that it's a worthy cause. And again, I'm not well, I guess my gifts are business, and I'm great at this. So I think that's part of who I am. And I know some people are not, but even if you are not, you still should make the commitment. Very similar to like your health, your physical body. just because you are not a business person doesn't mean your physical body should suffer because you neglect it or don't sustain it, right? You're not a good steward of it. It's the same with your finances. It's just not about being a multimillionaire. This is really about stewardship. This is really about not being wasteful and having a plan and implementing it. The same as a diet or creating a lifestyle where you have a balance of exercise and what you eat. I think it's so similar that it is something that every single person has to pursue because every person has money. Every person needs to use money. So just in the way food, you have to eat it. You should educate yourself on what is best for your body. It should be very similar for your finances. You can't just justify it yourself and say, "Hey, I'm not a business person. I don't want to be rich, so therefore I'm going to not learn about finances. I'm not going to have a plan. I'm not going to sit down with my spouse." Because that's the person who has an eating problem and doesn't exercise and they are not taking care of their body. They're not stewarding what's next. And then that really at the end of life falls on their family or their kids. And it just makes it a burden for the next generation.
Yeah. So I would say if you're listening to this and you're like, okay, well, all right, to hear it, what do I do? Brett kind of already answered that. But what I would also say is education. I think you need to educate yourself. And I think that's the first step that we really took was the education. And so, like I said, Rich Dad Poor Dad was a fantastic book that we read. There's what the Millionaire Next Door. Is that what?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Mhm.
What other one did? What other book would
Think
you?
and Grow Rich.
That's right. Think and Grow Rich.
It's all about mindset. It talks about money, but it talks about overall mindset. And that was a huge game changer for me. So I would encourage anybody to read that one. The same as The Richest Man in Babylon. That's a really easy, quick little read. And man, it is so practical for your life. I'd say those three books are like a foundation for setting your money mindset.
What podcast would you say if someone's gonna ask, hey, what podcast should I put on besides The Donkey and the Bee that they can listen to? Because I'm all about listening to anything that'll build me and make me a better person. I'm all about it. What would you suggest?
I love Ed Milet's show, and I would start there. And I like it because it's a lot of mindset and it's a lot about being happy with who you are, not where you are now, but who your future self, what your best self can become, but really enjoying the journey along the way. So he'll talk about lots of different things, but money and mindset being one of them. But in the context of let's be blissful and really be present and be happy on the journey and not just focus on the end result.
I think it says blissful dissatisfaction.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I thought you were going to say it, but you didn't.
I can remember it.
Okay, yeah. You said blissful. You got half of it.
I was getting there.
Awesome. Well, do you have anything to add?
I think I would just take away with this. If this intrigues you, if you've never considered that maybe you have a money mindset that is behind the scenes, that is stopping you, it's maybe self-sabotaging you pursuing these things, or maybe this resonates with you and this middle-class trap that you climb the corporate ladder, you're making more income, but you're still not saving anything. I would encourage you that there is another way, that we figured out another way, not by ourselves, but by following people who have gone before us. And successful people love to share their stories. They want to teach people because they're successful and it made a huge impact in their life. So there's so many books. So I would encourage you to consider this, have a conversation with your spouse and say, hey, I want to do something more with our finances, with our belief about money, with our retirement plan, because maybe you honestly don't have a retirement plan, or maybe you do and it's like, well, this isn't going to get us to past 75, right? Like there's huge ways to take care of your family, and it's not that difficult. It takes some discipline for sure, but it's not that difficult to implement.
Awesome. Yes. Well, that is all we have for today. Make sure that you tune in next time for The Donkey and the Bee.
See y'all.
Bye.